In this video we're going to demonstrate the CySys platform in action. What it looks like when you start and begin a CySys pen test and watch it play out on your network. In this scenario we've already configured our test. We've literally just pressed play and you can see the timer in the top right corner here. We've been going for around 30 seconds. The first action that the machine will take when deployed onto a network is to discover what kind of devices are within the IP range that we've given it. Here there are 4 hosts. We're running this on a lab environment for the purposes of this video, and it's going to pick up what those hosts are and enumerate them. Of course, when you're running this on your own network, there's going to be a lot more than 4 IPs on it, but this is just to give you a flavour of what this interface looks like. Now, once we've done this enumeration piece, we're now going to start looking for vulnerabilities within the machines that are picked up here. So if something's flashing on one of these machines, it means that the host is being looked at by Pentera. Something is happening. We're either doing some enumeration on that host, we're finding some vulnerabilities, some actions are taking place, maybe some exploits. What we can see here is we've been running for just over a minute and we've got some approvals here in the top right corner. Now when you run the Pentera platform, you can have it run in approval mode to say, do not carry out certain types of approval, certain categorizations of exploit without asking for my permission first. Now, the CySys machine has found the ability to run some exploits. What it's saying here in the top right corner is there are all these things, there's 5 things on these hosts that I would like to do, but I've asked for your permission first. You may put a measure in place like this if perhaps you had a network access control solution in place and you were worried about brute forcing taking place in case that was going to quarantine any devices. In such a scenario, you'd enable the approvals tick box functionality here. For the purposes of this run, I'm happy that whatever exploits it's going to be carrying out aren't going to have any impact on me, so I can tick all of these. I could untick any if I were concerned, and I can say yes, I'm happy for you to run that exploit against that vulnerability that you found. Go ahead and do so. And now what we'll see very shortly is some attacker achievements begin to take place. Now that I've put those approvals through, the machine is going to say, right, I've got your permission to run an exploit against that vulnerability. We're now going to start seeing some achievements populate on the column on the left hand side here. Now we've skipped forward to just over 3 minutes during this pen test run, and as we can see, we've started to get some achievements on the hosts that have been picked up. When an achievement is carried out by the machine, it will grade it, give it a severity rating from 1 to 10. And you'll see them populate as we go through this run. You'll likely see more achievements get carried out as we're going through this, but there we go, as I say it. So you can see this play out in real time. Watch what the machine is doing, see it step by step, and be alerted as to whenever the pen test or the pen tester in this case, CySys, manages to gather any attacker achievements. And now there's several of them populating. As we can see, the box is carrying out exploits and notifying us of everything that it's done. We've now found 12 vulnerabilities on these 4 hosts alone and conducted 18 attacker achievements in the short space of time that the Pentera platform has been running. Now, what we can do, whenever an achievement is carried out, we can click into any of these boxes along the left-hand side and actually get some insight as to how did this achievement, how did it play out? What did the pen tester, the attacker, in this instance, the Pentera machine, what did they do? How did they get to that achievement? What vulnerabilities were found and what methods were used to exploit those vulnerabilities? So these attack vectors will vary in complexity depending on the actual exploit type. If we jump into this one here where some domain credentials were found and validated, you get to see the step-by-step flow of what happened here. The first instance was that a host was vulnerable to MS-17, so a static vulnerability. The Pentera machine was able to exploit that vulnerability and then inject malware which was not blocked by the antivirus on that particular host. Now, that of course then enabled us to open a remote session, gather some information from hosts and validate domain credentials of users that we picked up. What we can do here, these black boxes are vulnerabilities that were picked up. Every white box following it was an attacker achievement that was carried out, and again you've got that trophy there to signify the achievement as well as the colouring of it to signify the severity. Of course, yellow being less severe, orange being medium, red being more severe. We can click into any of these achievements and get some insight as to, okay, what was this achievement? What was the insight? here an attacker may be able to abuse this static vulnerability to gain access to this host. What we can also do here is jump into the vulnerability and find out some more information about this. Again, that same level of that same kind of depth of high-level insight is given here, but for vulnerabilities we have more detail that can be found if you click on the detailed remediation piece. In doing so, this will take you to an attack wiki, a remediation wiki that will detail exactly what happened here, what this vulnerability was, how it occurs in more depth and clarity than the previous insight, what the problem is, a detailed breakdown, an understanding for you of exactly how that occurred, why it might occur, and how you need to be mindful of it. And we can also then run through the fixes for it. Now, of course, on the left-hand side here, you can see that once in the remediation wiki, you can jump to all kinds of remediations that will give your team the knowledge on how to resolve these particular issues that are found. But that's available for all of the vulnerabilities here. What we can also do is say, okay, well, there's one vulnerability here in that the host was vulnerable to MS-17. Another vulnerability here in that, and this is more of a dynamic problem, something that you wouldn't necessarily get from a vulnerability scan alone, in that the AV didn't block the payload that was injected. That problem's more dynamic because it's not necessarily a vulnerability in terms of a CVE vulnerability that would flag up in the likes of a Tenable or a Qualys scan, but this is more so a dynamic issue. A misconfiguration is present within your antivirus perhaps, or maybe the antivirus isn't sufficient to be blocking payloads, it's not performing as it should be. Either way, we can give you some insight as to that, and we can say what would happen if you were able to fix that vulnerability. What would the impact be to you? If we hit this little simulate fix button, you get to see exactly that. So we can see here that had the antivirus blocked the payload, the achievements that followed would not have been able to take place. Therefore, if you were looking at a remediation cycle, you could say, okay, well, I could fix this problem by resolving my antivirus issue. If perhaps that isn't an option in the near future, and that particular fix might take some more time to resolve, perhaps the antivirus itself isn't up to scratch, you can say, okay, well, my other option is to fix the issue up here. I can patch this vulnerability, I can resolve this particular issue, and if I did so, again, all of these problems are grayed out for you. So the fact that an antivirus isn't capable of blocking the payload doesn't necessarily matter because the attacker couldn't get there in the first instance. Fundamentally, what we're showing is there are often multiple ways in which you can resolve a particular problem. And with CySys, we will give you all of those understandings of perhaps what the best and easiest way of remediating would be, how you can go about putting that remediation into place with the remediation wiki, and understanding then what the impact of that is going to be for you, why you would go and put that fix into place, what it's going to do for your organisation. If we come back to the main screen, again, we can see there was a whole host of other attacker achievements here, and as I said, you can jump into any of these achievements by clicking on the left-hand side, getting an understanding of the attack vector and how it played out. Once the run is finished, you may have scheduled this run to last for a particular amount of time. You may say, I'm comfortable that that's found everything that I needed to find. Once the run is finished, it will either end itself if you've timed it, or you can hit stop up here. When you do so, we're going to see that the activity now, we've got cleanup being shown. So the machine will go and clean up anything that it did in order to leave your network exactly as it was before the pen test run began. So if an achievement was made whereby the machine managed to create its own domain administrator on the network, it will go and delete that domain admin. If it injected a payload to a particular host and your AV didn't block it, it will go and find that payload and delete it. So in essence, if you were to schedule a CySys run to last for 5 hours, at the end of that 5 hours, your network is exactly as it was before. So in enabling you to run a pen test like this at a regular cadence, at a convenience that suits you, whether that be on a weekly, bi-weekly or monthly basis, this platform can enable you to understand where your main risks are, what those risks are, and show you really how to go and mitigate them. So over time, that's going to reduce your risk, that's going to improve efficiency, and ensure that you are heading on a journey to becoming more secure.